o'clock. Let's get the meeting started. Today is August 14th, 2024, and I have the honor to call Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors meeting to order. And let's please get started with roll call, Andrea.
Yes, thank you. Director Showalter.
Here.
Scozola.
Here.
Mohan.
Here.
Walia.
Here.
Tyson.
Here.
Lee.
Present.
Klein.
Here.
Joining us remotely, Director Hilton.
Here.
Chua. I'll go back to you. Martinez Beltran. Here. Director Chua, are you there? Thank you. I'll note she's currently absent, but we do have a quorum of our board.
Okay, thank you. Time for public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. Typically, we have 3 minutes per person, and thank you so much for making the time. Bruce.
Thank you. I am Bruce Carney. I'm the chair of Carbon Free Mountain View, and the board of Carbon Free Mountain View, as well as the board of Carbon Free Silicon Valley, with which James Tully and I are both associated, have awarded the 5-timer award to Vice Chair George Tyson in honor of his 5th year on the board of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Congratulations, Vice Chair Tyson. You are the 7th recipient of this award, and you have served on the board with all 6 of the former recipients, because this organization is only 8 or 9 years old. And so by serving for the last 5 years, you've overlapped with all of the other recipients. I'll give this to the board secretary to convey to you with the best wishes of both Carbon Free Mountain View and Carbon Free Silicon Valley.
Thank you for that honor, and I appreciate your work as well, and I expect that to continue at least another 5 years, huh?
Sounds great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and honor one of our own. Thanks, George, for your service. Any other member of the public? Please.
Hi, James Tully, a resident of Sunnyvale again. I just wanted to add a few more pieces of information about the Home Intel Energy Savings Program that we at Home Energy Analytics runs for PG&E, that is available to all PG&E and Community Choice Energy Agency customers. So it's not restricted. In SVC's FAQ, it mentions this, that all Silicon Valley Clean Energy customers are eligible for these programs, because all of them are paying these public purpose program fees on the bill. So they might as well take advantage of it and use it. So one important thing to note about this free program, and we also don't sell anything to anybody, we're paid based on energy savings. So when people are successful, their bill goes down or it doesn't go up as much. We only get paid if we're helpful and they save energy. If they save nothing, we don't get paid. So we're motivated to be as helpful as possible. One critical thing to understand in this analysis, we're looking at all the energy use in a home, hour by hour electric usage, daily gas usage, and it's not just the house itself and major systems. So there's lots of low and no cost things that people can do to save. So this is a very good program for everyone, because there's ways for people to save without spending any or very little money, which low and moderate income households don't have to spare. So we're so holistic, we can find energy savings in most homes, unless they're already extremely efficient, and that's very, very rare. There's a lot of energy waste out there. So what it all boils down to is just taking advantage of a strategy to take advantage of the customers as partners by empowering the customers. So it's not just something that you have to do. They can play a part. It's understanding your bill, if you will, but at a more detailed and practical and useful level. It's really understanding your energy use, where you're wasting, how you can save, energy savings recommendations. It's also guidance for electrification, because we're analyzing all the gas side, so we know what people are using for water heating and home heating, so we can help set the stage for the electrification. We also do an electric panel analysis, as Don had talked about earlier, we've analyzed the electric panel capacity, and only 35% of the panel capacity is being used across all of our clients, and that's very common. And so a lot of electrification can be done at a 100 amp panel. So we do a rate analysis also and guide people on that. So lots of help for people. Thank you.
Thank you for all your efforts, and thank you for taking the time to come here. Okay, any other member of the public? Anyone online?
No hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to consent calendar, and today we have 1A through 1R. Unless any member of the board wants to pull any item, we are going to take a motion on them together, but let me take public comment first. On consent, seeing none, bring it back to the board. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Lee and seconded by Mayor Mohan. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Chair Walia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson,
Yes.
Director Scozola,
Aye.
Mohan,
Aye.
Klein, Showalter,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hilton,
Aye.
Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Chua, Director Chua.
She was on just now. In fact, I wanted to mention to you.
She was. I saw her there. But Director Chua, are you there to vote on the consent calendar? I'll vote her, or I'll note her as absent for that, but that motion carries.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to the regular calendar, and we'll start with item number 2. That is a CEO report from CEO Monica Padilla.
All right, good evening again. So, in today's CEO report, happy to answer any questions you might have. If not, I will start with our first item that I wanted to call out, and that's the introduction of our newest team member, Elisa Floyd. She is a legislative and government affairs intern. Elisa is a recent graduate of Homestead High School in Sunnyvale, and she is on her way to UCLA in the fall. She's interning with us with Benna Chang, and she wants to say a few words.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Hi, board. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you for the nice introduction. My name is Lisa, and I'm currently a Gov and Leg intern here at SVCEA, working with Benna and the other members of that team, but also just getting to know everyone who works at SVCEA. And I'd love to get to talk to you at some point. I've seen a few of you on Zoom in committee meetings so far, so it's nice to see you in person. But yeah, I've been involved in environmental advocacy since 4th grade, when my teacher first taught us about it with actually a hands-on project where we started sorting our food waste from our other waste at school. And then from there just got involved as a student educating my peers about climate change, but also as a committee member at a lot of like city council meetings, seeing Mayor Klein here and speaking out about issues that affect me and my youth peers, but also my community. And I got more interested in clean energy more recently, just because I started realizing how many solutions really depend on where we get our energy, and just realizing how solutions focused the area of clean energy is, and it's an area that gives me a lot of hope. And so when I think about what career I want to maybe pursue in the future, because I know that I want to work on something related to solutions to climate change, and I'm trying to figure out what path that will look like. Clean energy is one that I'm really interested in. So I learned about Silicon Valley Clean Energy actually in high school through the Education Fund, which is a grant that high school students can apply for. And so when my peers and I wanted to organize an Earth Day, we were really lucky to receive the grant from Silicon Valley Clean Energy for 2 years in a row, actually. So we just got a lot of support, not only with the grant, but SVCE showed up at all our events, and handed out a lot of spirit gear, but also just taught us about like our utility bills and things like that. So, and then this past year, I served on my school's board with Rod Sinks, who was a board member in the past, and he would always wear his SVCE gear everywhere. So I learned a lot about SVCE on that, and now I'm just really grateful to get the opportunity to intern here. So thank you for letting me introduce myself. I guess to end with a few fun facts, I really like running and walking, and I actually walk to the office. It's pretty close to my house, so I'm in the office pretty often, so if you ever stop by, I'd love to talk to you more. Thank you for the time. It's nice to meet you.
Alyssa, welcome to SVCE. This is fabulous. It's exciting, and it's a perfect reminder we are all here working for the future, and when we see young students like you, it's a good reminder that's what we're working for. And the other way I look at that word future is you are our future. Your generation is our future that's going to work towards saving the earth. Supervisor Lee?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. I just want to say that good job, congratulations for Alyssa. She's definitely a rock star, and I'm very glad to see that she's joined the SVC team for the summer. She was a member of the Sustainability Commission this past year when it was launched back in February, and has been very active in the climate action education in the community as part of the Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. So welcome. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll move on with the CEO report.
Okay, we have a couple other items that we want to call out. Sitlali Sandoval is going to be presenting or providing an update on a very important proceeding that's happening right now at the California Public Utility Commission, the CPUC. This is called the Timely Energization Proceeding. And this is something that I think the board is cares very much about, or if you're not already aware of it. It is essentially a result of two legislative bills that passed last year that require that the CPUC work with the investor-owned utilities such as PG&E in establishing some standards on how much time is acceptable, including the maximum time allowed to energize certain end uses and enhance distribution systems. And so SVCE, on our own, we've been a participant to this proceeding at the CPUC, and we're also a participant through CalCCA. So Sitlali, if you're there, is Sitlali there, Andrea? Yeah. So Sitlali Sandoval will be providing a brief update.
Thank you, Monica. Good evening, directors. As Monica stated, I will be providing an update on the timely energization proceeding. Next slide, please. So before I get into the actual update, I want to clarify a key thing to keep in mind, which is the difference between energization and interconnection. Energization is the process to connect new load to the distribution system. So for example, if a new affordable housing development has been constructed, connecting it to the grid so that the lights can be turned on is an example of what we're talking about, what we're going to be talking about. And then interconnection is the process to connect new generation facilities to the distribution system. Next slide, please. Okay, so SVCE, and actually the reason we're all here working on these important matters is because SVC has electrification goals, and these goals are dependent upon timely energization service. So if customers are facing a lot of delays and become frustrated with the energization process, that becomes a disincentive to electrifying. And unfortunately, energization delays have impacted all of our communities. They've impacted residents, small and large businesses, and even essential services such as hospitals. So this is a huge problem, not just in SVC's territory, but across the entirety of California. And so last year, Senate Bill 410 and Assembly Bill 50 were passed, two try to solve this issue and improve the electric utility processes that are really the processes for getting energized. And so these bills required the CPUC to establish target energization timelines that the investor-owned utilities, meaning PG&E and our territory, would need to follow. And these targets need to be adopted on or before September 30th of this year. So that's next month. And in response to these bills, the CPUC opened up the timely energization proceeding. And we've been very active in it. We've advocated, as Monica stated, through our trade association, CalCCA, as well as independently as SVCE, and we continue to engage in the proceeding to improve the energization processes. On Monday, actually, the CPUC issued a proposed
Lolly, looks like you're frozen. I think we lost her.
Okay, I can continue, I think. I told Marin, you better stick around because if Sitlali falls off, you're on. Okay, so earlier this week, the CPUC provided a proposed decision establishing kind of the guidelines on how they're going to set what they think is an acceptable both average amount of days and maximum amount of days. And I think if you go to the next slide. Oh, no, okay. So I'm just going to wing it until Sitlali gets back. But I've seen the proposed decision, and the proposed decision essentially establishes the amount of business days and regular days that is acceptable for PG&E and the other IOUs to allow for energization. And these numbers are quite big. I think there's something in the order of, I want to say like 30 weeks for energization, depending on the type of energization you're going to have, and then a maximum amount of days as well. And then the proceeding also provides for a process for how customers may complain if PG&E or the other IOUs are not within, oh good, Mike has it, are not within the standards that are established by the CPUC. And so, is she back on yet? No, okay. And so this is, again, a really important proceeding, one that we've tried to influence with mainly our influence being on making sure that those standards, those number of days, are in fact acceptable. If you go to the next slide. Oh, was that the end? So through this proceeding, there was also kind of a process to understand what's causing some of these delays. Why is PG&E taking so long to energize, especially down to the residential and business level? And what the proceeding, or what I think we pretty much already knew, is that it's really around an allocation of resources and priorities by the IOUs, with a lot of the resources being diverted to hardening of the grid and the wildfire mitigation measures that we talked about earlier in the affordability study session. So PG&E and the other IOUs are essentially being responsive to these requests for energization with the types of resources and the resources that they have available. And so at one point there was discussion about whether the causes of these delays had anything to do with the permitting process happening at the individual jurisdictions, so like community in cities like yours. And what we found, or what the CPUC found, or what's been evolved through this proceeding, is that that is not the main driver of these delays. The main driver, in fact, of the delays are the allocation of resources. And so the proposed decision came out this week. We'll likely provide comments to that proceeding, since we are a participant both, again, through CalCCA and then individually. And then ultimately, the CPUC will have to issue a decision, and it sounds like September 30th, 2024 is when that decision comes out. And so once we know more information, we'll provide it to the cities so that they also are aware that this is now the standard and how they can inform their communities as they go and get permits or try to energize on what the process is here. Is she back yet? Nope, okay. All right, well that was that. I apologize for our technical difficulties. So hopefully I didn't mess it up too much. Okay.
You did great.
All right, thank you. And then Benna Chang is going to provide a brief update on this climate bond that we talked about earlier as well.
Good evening, Board. Benna Chang, Director of Government and Legislative Affairs. Wanted to provide a quick update on an important issue, which is the climate bond. So as you heard a sneak preview of in the study session, the legislature and governor did come to an agreement on a $10 billion climate bond, which is on this November's ballot. So this is a very large package that contains investments in water, agriculture, extreme heat mitigation, and other things. Importantly for SVCE, the bond also includes funding for long-duration storage, offshore wind port infrastructure, and as we talked about during the study session, wildfire mitigation. I also wanted to note on the next slide that there were other areas of interest to the board, including funding for workforce development, sea level rise, and community resilience centers as part of the bond. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Anyone online? Someone online?
Yvonne has her hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Yvonne.
Thank you. I just, Benna, thank you for that. I wanted to ask, we have, I know that this has just come out, but we have been anticipating that this might happen. So have we looked at what might be the areas that we're most interested in chasing?
Sure. So if you go back to the first slide, we just highlighted a couple of areas that we're interested in. A lot of these areas, I would say, probably would not go directly to SVCE, but are obviously very helpful for especially the grid infrastructure and making sure that that has additional funding support. So I'm not currently anticipating that SVCE will go directly after these funds, but that our other partners, including our member agencies, could benefit. So for example, on the second slide, there's some funding for community resiliency centers. And this could include zero emission backup power for community facilities. So that could be something that our member agencies would be interested in. Hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you some more later. Thank you.
Other questions online? No? Okay, we'll go with Pat first.
I always want to ask, how much is this going to cost to the average state taxpayer?
Excellent question. So I don't have a dollar figure, but I know that the state had some estimates on what kind of bonding capacity they had. And both this and the school facilities bond fit within that overall cap. So the state estimated that they have this amount of money that they could go out and borrow for. And so the legislature worked to get the dollar amounts down so that it fit within that cap.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Are we going to put this on the agenda to see if this board would take a position on this bond in the near future?
Yes, we were just talking about that issue as well. So generally, we take positions on legislation that follow through our legislative policy platform that the board decides and votes on every year. So we were just taking a look at how this lines up with that and whether or not we want to take a position. So we'll definitely keep the board updated.
Great, thank you.
Great question, thanks. Other questions? None? Okay. I think that's with this item, unless we found Sitlali online again. I know we've had technical issues there.
She's back on, but I guess if you have questions, I can bring her up. But if there's no questions on the timely energization proceeding, then we're good.
Okay. Monica, can we ask if there was anything else you wanted to state? I know you did
Oh,
a
she
great
wasn't
job.
able to hear anything I said.
Okay.
So-
Okay.
Yeah, she lost internet connection.
Okay.
So.
I wasn't sure.
Well, let's tell her that I said everything she wanted her to say. So.
I am pretty sure you did. No doubt about it. That's fabulous. Okay. Any questions for Citlali? Seeing none, let's move on to item number 3. Okay, I'll pause. Thank you. Public comment on item number 2. I think I missed that.
Okay.
No, thanks. Moving on to item number 3, which is to authorize the CEO to execute an agreement with Energy Solutions for advisory, oversight, and evaluation support of a residential accessible on-bill financing pilot through 2026, and execute an agreement with Franklin Energy Services not to exceed $7.87 million with a net SVCE contribution of $5.2 million for on-bill financing pilot implementation through 2035. That is one of the longest agenda item names I've read. Okay. Who's presenting? I think Jessamine Allen, Programs Lead, and now we have Justin coming here as well, both of you, right?
Yes.
Please.
Excellent job with our tongue twister title, Chair. Yes, good evening. I'm very excited. I'm just doing a brief introduction to this item because it's a super important contract and a program that we're bringing to you here that we believe will help us reach our moderate income customers and help them electrify. So these are folks who, you know, don't meet the kind of typical low income definition, so they're not maybe able to participate in some of the richer no cost programs that are out there, including some programs that we're running that are targeted at low income folks. But nonetheless, you know, we know that they don't have a lot of money sitting around able to pay for upfront costs on electrification projects. And so this program concept and the contract that we're bringing to you, we believe will help minimize the upfront out-of-pocket costs, ideally get it down to zero, and also make sure that that's not resulting in an ongoing monthly bill increase to those customers due to this financing service. So making sure we're not sort of exacerbating affordability issues at the same time. This is a space that I think we are sort of taking a bit of a leadership position in as SVCE. So this is something that we are the only CCA engaged with the IOUs at the state level to think about how we can roll out affordable financing and really tap into, you know, third-party capital and what will make that system work across the state. And so this program and pilot that we're talking about tonight is going to help feed into that conversation. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessamine Allen, who has become our expert on this topic over the several years that we've been engaged in that state conversation and now in crafting this contract. She's been doing a fantastic job along with support from her manager, Nupur, who's here in the audience, and Adam, who's on our regulatory team. So it's really been a group effort, but yeah, excited for Jessamine to be able to share this contract. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all. All right. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that one of our collaborators is online. His name is Bruce Mast. He's a consultant, part of the tech team. He's a thought leader on energy programs and accessible financing in California, and a major reason behind why we're here today. So I'm going to jump into the presentation, but Bruce will be on hand at the end when we get to discussion in case there's any questions I get stumped by. So our request for you today will be to approve 2 contracts related to an on-bill financing pilot, one for implementation services through 2035, and another in a more of a kind of advisory oversight role through 2026. So kind of setting some of the context for the challenge that we're trying to address, we're talking about the built environment. So nearly 50% of emissions associated with buildings comes from residential natural gas consumption, which is primarily space and water heating. Across these appliances, that's a price tag of nearly $4 billion in our service territory. And I want to note that this is the total cost, not the incremental cost of going gas to electric, which we've often talked about. But we use the total cost because we know that some people still struggle to afford those energy upgrades. And we also have different conversations about and kind of analyses going on right now about looking at different sources of funding on how to cover these costs, what will be borne by ratepayers and taxpayers. And we also understand that different customer segments have different abilities to afford these costs. So if we look across the spectrum of income, on the low income side, we're moving towards a model for direct install where there will be no out-of-pocket costs to customers for energy upgrades. Decades of energy programs have shown that incentives like rebates and tax credits have primarily benefited higher income households. And this is in part because of the challenge of the upfront costs and carrying those costs. And because many forms of conventional finance, like loans, have kind of requirements that exclude large portions of the population, such as credit score requirements or debt-to-income ratios. And so this leaves this, middle or moderate income segment of our population that struggles to access energy upgrades. And this is where we see a role for accessible financing. In this case, on-bill financing, and this is where the financing is tied to the customer and repaid on the utility bill. And so instead of requirements like credit scores, we look at the bill payment history to assess their ability to repay the financing. On-bill financing has been deployed by other load-serving entities in California and across the country. In California, both IOUs and CCAs have deployed on-bill financing. These programs have also shown to be very secure with very low default rates on the order of a few percent. So providing kind of an illustrative example of this challenge that customers face, while there are significant rebates available, the customer still has to go out-of-pocket, carry those out-of-pocket costs until those rebates pay out, which may take months or even a year later in the form of tax credits. And then the customer may still be left with a significant kind of net copay to cover the project cost. What we would be doing through our on-bill financing is kind of layering different layers of support. One being that the program would kind of carry the cost of the rebate so the customer doesn't have to go out of pocket. And then we add a layer of financing to help then further reduce any, or in some cases minimize or reduce completely any upfront customer copay. And what's really unique about the financing is that we're going to constrain that loan amount to be less than the bill savings achieved by the project. So in this very simple example of water heater with a customer that could save $1,900 by going from gas to electric, we would say for this pilot, we could take 80% of those bill savings essentially in the form of a loan, which then the customer would repay on the bill. And there's a lot of different factors that go into those bill savings calculations, notably rates. The difference between gas and electric is probably the most important, but there are other factors like how much the customer uses gas versus electric, their usage patterns, the equipment age and efficiency. So there's a lot of complexity that goes into that bill savings analysis. And so the goal is to, reduce or eliminate any customer copay and out-of-pocket cost. So a few more kind of overarching details of what this on-bill financing pilot will look like, and this is a new program area for SVCE and our programs team. So just to reiterate, this will be recorded and repaid on their utility bill. It is a loan, 0% interest with a 10-year term. And the goal, again, is to get to no or low out-of-pocket cost to the customer by kind of factoring in the incentives and financing. And again, that while there will be an on-bill charge for that loan repayment, that will be offset by bill savings across the gas and electric bills for that project. We're supporting technologies that can deliver significant bill savings, so that's primarily water heating, space conditioning, efficiency, some solar and storage. On the order of 200 to 250 customers. This will be primarily kind of single family. We also include small multifamily, less than 4 units in that category. Customers with the high bill savings potential so that we have enough of the project that's kind of worth financing, as well as trying to target moderate income households because we know this is a underserved customer segment. There are also strong customer protections built into the program, including the equipment being warrantied throughout that entire repayment period, as well as customer support available to address kind of any issues with the equipment or questions about billing and bill impacts. So just to highlight again why this is so important, both to SVCE and more generally, but we have good evidence to show that this is a model that will be more accessible to underserved customer segments, in part because we're addressing the upfront cost as well as the ongoing operational costs from electrification. We're going to be targeting moderate income households to really deliver the benefits to those who are most in need and will be best served, as well as building in strong customer protections to ensure that those bill savings are actually achieved. This will also be very important to inform our broader kind of conversations on financing. We have efforts looking at kind of capital requirements for electrification, as well as we are part of statewide conversations on residential finance. And as Justin mentioned, we're the only CCA currently involved in that conversation. A little bit about what this will look like for the customer. So I want to, make sure this will be a very kind of targeted pilot. We're going to be looking, we have a lot of data and analyses that will be done beforehand to try to identify those customers with the high bill savings potential. And as much as we can, also try to target areas of moderate income households to generate kind of good leads for the pilot. And then there's the kind of loan approval process, which will involve, home assessment, financial assessment to calculate the loan amount. The energy measures would be installed by the pilot contractors, and then there will be a loan issued. And then the customer will start to repay that on-bill charge for 10 years. And again, the customer, this should be a bill neutral, kind of at worst, bill neutral impact for the customer. And a really key element is providing support to customers to help coordinate any repairs that fall under warranty so that the equipment is functional, as well as kind of questions about billing and operations to make sure that they are kind of operating the equipment in a way that delivers the maximal bill savings. So this is a complicated concept, and we're not working alone. And that's why we have 2 contracts before you today. The first with Tech Clean California, which Energy Solutions is the entity we're contracting with, is the lead implementer. It's a statewide initiative with many different efforts, incentives and pilots, and they would be providing an advisory and co-management role in this pilot, as well as bringing significant financial resources. And then in terms of the actual implementation, so all the kind of customer acquisition and project origination would be handled by Franklin Energy. They would also be providing this extensive customer support during the cost recovery period. In terms of kind of budget and funding, so the kind of cost of the pilot in terms of operations, that customer service, all the capital that would be flowing through the implementer and through these projects is nearing $8 million. Our tech collaborators are contributing nearly $2.7 million. This is funding that they've gotten through the CPUC as a program implementer to support this pilot. So the net SVCE contribution is $5.2 million, which has already been allocated under our accessible financing program funding. We're also going to be heavily leveraging outside incentives to help lower these project costs. And there's additional in-kind labor from the tech team, especially on the evaluation side, that's not reflected. A little bit more breakdown of what's going into that implementation budget, and this is the contract with the implementer. There's operational costs related to admin, marketing, and outreach. This ongoing customer support, this is that support during the cost recovery period. That is a significant budget allocation right now. This will they will provide the service to address kind of any and coordinate repairs that fall under warranty, be on call to talk about bill impacts, equipment operation with customers. Big uncertainty is this pilot is how much support will actually be needed. So we've allocated kind of a lot of resources to this budget item to make sure we have the funding available, but of course, we will only be billed on the actual amount of customer support needed. And then there's SVCE funding and the funds of kind of our own incentives, as well as project warranties, the 10-year warranty to cover the project. The capital, so the amount that we're issuing in loans, is on the order of $2.7 million. Again, the most of that, part of the pilot will be seeing how much comes back to us, but based on other programs, it's usually default risk rates are on the order of a few percent. And then there's additional contingency funds kind of for flexibility in the budget. There's been a lot of conversations on risk and risk mitigation, both within our programs team, admin and finance, accounts and legal. We've highlighted some of the big three here. The first, one of the big risks is bill savings not materializing. So customers don't see the bill savings that we estimated. And so there is a significant evaluation aspect to this pilot, both with predicting the bill savings and then evaluating what bill savings have been delivered. There's additional kind of budgeting set aside, and being very clear to the customer kind of what we can and kind of cannot guarantee when it comes to bill savings, because we know there's a lot of different factors that impacts bills. There's the non-payment of the on-bill charge, so if customers stop paying that on-bill repayment. So we are working with legal to evaluate kind of different options to increase that repayment rate. It's also why we're limiting this to a pilot and using program funds. And again, like other programs, there could be that we're in the process of deploying issues with the equipment or the contractors doing the installation. So we're following best practices from these other programs, increasing our insurance requirements, strong participant and different agreements. I want to highlight that this has been a multi-year effort. We've received board funding several years ago, and then there's been a lot of collaboration in the pilot design. We brought the concept to the exec committee in June. Today we have the contracts for you. The goal is to launch by end of year. The installations and the loans would be issued in 2025, beginning with the on-bill cost recovery, and then there would be a really intense evaluation period. I mean, there's going to be evaluation throughout, but especially on the bill savings realized. That evaluation kind of happens a year after the equipment has been installed. So that's going to be through 2026, and we'll be participating and using the learnings from this pilot to inform the statewide discussions on accessible financing. And with a 10-year term, that brings us to 2035 when cost recovery ends. So this is our request for you today. We have two contracts, one with Energy Solutions. This is the kind of tech program partners that are bringing a lot of critical, advisory and evaluatory support, as well as nearly $2.7 million of funding for this pilot. And then with Franklin Energy Services, which they're doing the actual kind of implementation and customer support through 2035. And that's it for my presentation, and I figured there'll be questions.
Thank you, Jessamine Allen, Program Lead. And we had Justin Zagunis, Director of Decarb Programs and Policy. A lot of interesting programs coming out of your team, Justin, this year, which is exactly where we are at SVCE today. We are trying to reach the customers directly, expand our reach through the cities and directly to the customers in so many numerous ways. In fact, the earlier study session from 5 till 6:45 today was affordability. Again, a lot of interesting ideas and great feedback after a fabulous presentation by staff. So, questions? Supervisor Lee.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. This is a very excellent program. It mentions it's about 200 to 250 households, and total cost for us about 7.8 million. Just do rough math, about 20, 25K per household. But of course, it's going to be very different, depends on different needs of any one of these households. But one of the things that we're going to look for is the high potential savings. Those would be the perfect candidate for this program, right?
Yeah, so we already have some ballpark figures of kind of how many annually you need about $500 of savings to really have a meaningful amount of finance. That's for like a water heater HVAC project. If you add solar and storage, then there's just a lot more savings there. And yeah, so the current scale is around 200, 250. There's a lot of kind of fixed costs with implementing a pilot as well, and so the goal is also, as we're doing this pilot, identify kind of this pathway to scale, so we can drive costs down to make it more cost effective. This will also be critical learnings to potentially access outside capital, as well as under other funding sources to kind of subsidize further, expansions.
And it has a built-in 10-year payback period.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the minimum 10 years or maximum 10 years, or just fixed 10 years?
I would say the initial term is 10 years. There might be potential for it to go slightly longer if there are cases where we have to stop a on-bill charge for some reason, like if the equipment malfunctions and there's an issue that it wouldn't take a month to resolve, but we only can work in kind of month increments, so we might issue kind of, it gets tricky with the billing system, what we can and can't do and how quickly we can do it with these on-bill charge. So there might be cases where we forgive a month, and that might mean extending the loan term a month, but that's still kind of the mechanics of that are still to be kind of worked through with our billing system and the billing provider.
Maybe I'll just add that, but we are calculating the sort of monthly charge based on this 10-year target. And so it's sort of like it's going to be consistently 10 years across all the projects, because that's how we're determining what we can even finance.
And from the homeowner's point of view, what they pay on average, say for the past year or so, would be the benchmark they will use, is that's what they will be paying during those 10-year periods, subject to, I guess, increases of, rates of PG&E or our rates or whatnot, right?
Yeah, so we would, one of the requirements for participants is they need to have a year's worth of gas and electric data to evaluate, and that will kind of set the future projections for savings. And there are other things that can impact the kind of energy usage after the equipment is installed, but we're kind of, limiting it to what we model under the kind of equipment performance and the quality of installation. So if there are changes in occupancy or different usage patterns, those are things that could impact bill savings, but those aren't kind of under the guarantee of the program, although we would try to work with customers and identify, if for some reason they're not seeing the bill savings expected, that's where the customer support comes in and helps identify, like, have you added new loads to your house? Is this really related to your water heater, or could it be some other, appliance? So that's a large part of the customer support and delivering the bill savings to the customers.
And our financing terms here is 0%, which means clearly we're not expecting to, quote, make money off this deal. So of the $7 million that we're spending, how much are we expecting to get back in the 10-year period?
So the current loan pool is around $2.7 million. Default rates for other on-bill financing programs have only been a few percent. So we're expecting, and again, we're maybe doing some things that are slightly different, longer financing periods. We're also trying to navigate the transition of properties, because that could happen during that 10-year period. We're still actively looking at what a estimated kind of non-payment rate would be. I think we've we expect at least 75%, but much likely much more. But that's just how the 75% is just how we set aside like risk mitigation funds. But other programs have 99% repayment rates.
That's all the question I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Director Klein? Did
Yes.
she say 75% payment or non-payment?
Payment.
That's all.
Yeah, but a little closer to 99%.
Thank you very much, and it's good to see this program. I've seen it several times now, and one of the questions I was going to ask about was, as we've talked about in the past, owner occupancy versus tenant, and you mentioned a little bit about load changes, and so either if it's tenant owned and kind of differing, a new tenant comes in and how that's continued to pay back. Can you give a quick update on that, as well as the concept of they buy an EV and all of a sudden their loads change dramatically, and how that plays into the system? And so, and then from the third thing is how quickly we would come back to say your load has changed or things have changed.
So the financing will be set by kind of the usage patterns at the time the loan originates. And then, if it will primarily be single-family homeowners, we are hoping to have some rental properties participate. And I just want to say there will be agreements between, there's going to be kind of multiple agreements. The landlord will obviously be involved as well as the tenant. And so when there's also kind of changes in tenancy, there will not be necessarily a new agreement, but there will be notifications in place so that the new tenant is aware why they're seeing the on-bill charge. Right now, I don't believe we would change the financed amount if there's changes in tenancy and usage patterns, but we would kind of send notifications, information to the customers that there is this program, some background, and information about kind of rates and off-peak and peak hours, because basically using it off-peak is where you get the most savings. So there will be some kind of educational and outreach materials. In terms of customer adding a new load, I mean, if they contact I guess it depends on whether they feel the need to contact the program. They might recognize they're adding a large EV, and that's the reason their electric bill is going up, rather than changes or issues with the water heater. But the customer service will be constantly available. I'm not sure about the exact windows, but they'll be able to get in touch with what's called an energy advisor, who will be able to collect information about the household, ask about kind of recent changes in loads, occupancy. They might be able to maybe rerun energy models to make sure it's not the kind of equipment through the program that's like underperforming or something like that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. The third part of that question was, is it customer driven, or is it something that will be is it automated from our standpoint of, we see a change and we do outreach? And I'm just trying to get a better idea. Is it a push or pull sort of concept of okay, things have changed, and is it a notification that we've noticed that you've changed, and do you want to partner to figure out what that load change is, or if there's issues, or is it the customer waits 2 or 3 months and it's like, my bill has gone through the roof, I don't understand can you help? So is it a push or pull model at the end of the day?
Yeah, I'll say a few things and then I might let Bruce chime in. I know the program, the goal is that there will be kind of annual notifications sent out to remind people kind of you're participating in this program. Here are the benefits. Here are some of the conditions. The expected bill savings. The main kind of and then the main evaluation that we will be doing proactively happens at that year one. So after we have a full heating and cooling season, we can kind of have enough data to basically assess, did we deliver the bill savings that we initially modeled? So that's primarily where there's a very proactive and intense evaluation. At that point, if we realize we were off about our modeled savings, there is kind of contingency in the budget and kind of a process for reducing that forward monthly charge if we realize the equipment can't deliver the bill savings. So that would all be kind of done and built into the program. And then kind of moving forward, any time past that, primarily after that year one, we have that pretty good guarantee that we installed equipment properly and it's operating as we predicted. So we're not expecting there to be kind of equipment related issues other than there are some things that could fall under warranty, which again the operator, the implementer will help mediate. Changes after kind of year one and unexpected kind of bill impacts. That's mostly going to be changes in occupancy or usage behavior.
Okay.
But I'll let Bruce say something if he's has something more.
Yeah, thank you, Jessamine. And Bruce Mast, I'm an independent consultant working with as part of the Tech in California implementation team. And this area of measurement and verification has been an area that we've been investing quite a bit of thought to, and it's an area where the tech team will be supporting SVCE. So to part of your question, yes, this will be a proactive analysis that we do for every participating customer. And if we see a situation where we're not delivering on the savings that we promised, we will take proactive action to either correct that or give them a discount on their charges. So we don't wait for them to notice that their bills are out, outside the range of expectations, because some people look and some people don't. So you'll be proactive in that sense. When customers enroll, one of the requirements for enrollment is that they do need to give us permission to access their gas and electric usage, and so we'll be able to see in not quite real time, but in short order, like the hourly electricity usage, daily gas usage. We can monitor that, starting from the day that's installed. We're going to do a complete measurement and verification analysis at the 1 year anniversary, because we want to have a full year of weather. That's particularly important for heating and cooling loads and even hot water loads that are weather sensitive. We want that 1 year of performance so that we can see the complete performance. And then we're going to be doing some analysis to kind of disentangle changes in the bill that we're responsible for versus things that we're not responsible for. So, for example, we can't guarantee the weather. It could be hotter next summer, it could be colder next winter, but it's straightforward to normalize for changes in weather. We can't guarantee PG&E's bill rate changes, so we can normalize for that. If they're buying an EV, it's pretty straightforward to see that in the bills and control for that. And so we'll be kind of sorting out and looking at the changes that are attributable to our interventions. And if we're not delivering the savings that we promised, then either we send somebody out to fix it, or we give them a discount, or we take some kind of action to make sure that we're delivering on the promises to the company.
Okay, thank you very much.
And not to belabor this, but I think it is a really important question. And I think you're touching on two things that you're hearing. One is there is a timing element, which is there's fluctuations, and so we're going to be watching this, but there is always going to be some lag probably where we're like, oh, okay, what is happening? But we do intend to be proactive in understanding what is happening for this customer, because we want it to be a positive experience to be going through this. And so we don't want it to be people are calling us because they're upset because their bill has gone up a bunch. We want to be getting out there ahead of it. I think it's also touching on another thing which reminded me of I think it was Director Tyson that mentioned this in the affordability session, but bills are really confusing, right? And let alone bills where you're sort of comparing what it was before to what it would be now. You know, like you're doing this sort of theoretical comparison based on how gas rates have also changed, even though you don't have gas anymore because we've electrified your home. We're going to be working through how can we present that in a clear enough way to customers that they really understand, like, yes, your bill has maybe gone up because rates are going up or that things are trending in a certain direction or you got an EV, but the equipment that we installed is saving you money on that portion of what you're doing. That's just it's going to be difficult, but that's really important that we figure out how to do that so that we can message this and give the narrative correctly.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Very impressive how you're thinking of everything. Questions?
Yeah, I have another question, and it's really about the length of the program. You know, normally when you have a pilot program, you think about a beginning and an end, and it sounds like the end could be as long as 10 years out. That's a long time. Is that really what you think is the end of this pilot, or will it be a couple of years or 3 years before you would make recommendations to us about expanding it?
Oh yeah, it would definitely be before the 10 years. The 10 years is, when the cost of recovery will be completed. We're gonna learn a lot. We're doing a kind of targeting analysis right now. So that's gonna be looking to identify kind of high bill savings potential. In the first year, there's gonna be a lot of key learnings about how we use that targeting for marketing and outreach and the customer acceptance rates. So, and then also, how much can we actually finance when we do the evaluation? So even in the first year, there's gonna be a lot of key learnings about whether this can be successful. And there's a lot of questions about like customer acceptance and the kind of loan kind of financial analyses and seeing how kind of how that works, and then will be really key to seeing kind of how successful this could be, and then also this 1 year post intervention, making sure we can deliver on the bill savings, and having confidence in that we can have conversations about expanding or changing.
Yeah, I would just also, you're probably doing this, but when you're in a pilot, it's very, very important to have a set of questions. What do we expect this to accomplish, so that everybody knows what success means or doesn't. And I've been involved in some where that was done well, and some where it wasn't done well. And it's an important thing to think about and share with people.
Yeah, that's part of what the tech team has really contributed, is this kind of theory of change. And so we're looking at what other financing programs have done and see how we can reach higher acceptance rates, greater loan values, in customer participation. So those are there's a lot of KPIs that are going to be tracked as part of this, and kind of compared against other financing examples to make sure we're kind of improving and exceeding kind of the expectations.
Well, that's one set. That's the set that for us policymakers or for you. But there also has to be another set for the people who are in the program. Mm-hmm. And they're not, they're probably not the same questions.
Director Mohan.
In your staff report, I read that other CCAs have implemented something of this nature. So I'm assuming you have their experience to sort of fall back on.
Yeah, so Sonoma Clean Power was the first to implement on-bill financing. We've had some conversations with them. Peninsula Clean Energy, they also have on-bill financing. That one has expanded and kept going. They don't tie the financing to the bill savings, and they're also not working with an implementer. So there are some key differences, but we've been discussing, talking about them, the processes that they have set up, what does some of the counting and billing look like. So yeah, we're still in conversations with them to learn kind of how theirs is advancing.
And what would be the next step after this agreement has been approved? How would you make the connection between you, the consumer, and maybe the city permitting departments? How is all that going to come through?
The city permitting, like for the
I mean,
the projects.
where
or-
would you get your information about what a household needs? If I did an energy upgrade, for example, and if I didn't know anything about SVCE, and I just went to wherever one buys an induction cooktop,
Yeah,
and
so-
I install it in my house, how would I know anything about this financing or this?
Yeah, so our tech program implementers, they have access to gas and electric data across the entire state, including our customers. So there's going to be this, they're working, I've already taken first steps for this analysis to identify kind of those high energy users. So these would be good candidates for the financing. And then we would be working with them to kind of partner with some of our data to then generate kind of essentially a customer lead list. So these are people that we've already kind of pre-screened for bill savings potential, maybe some other factors. And most of our kind of engagement with customers will be direct, probably through email and very targeted campaigns, because we know this is not going to be, there's going to be a very, targeted customer segment that's eligible for this. So that's at least how we're planning on some of the customer engagement, is really us reaching out to them because we have their, we have their contact information.
And we can use the electric and gas data that we have to make some educated guesses about what kind of technologies you have and what upgrade potential may exist in your home, right? So that's kind of how we're going to take that consumption data to understand what we think maybe the opportunity is for your specific home, rather than going to every city trying to pull permit data and actually getting that level of data. We're starting with this analysis.
Okay, so if a consumer like me, if I didn't reach out to you, you still have ways of reaching out
Yes.
to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, through our normal marketing channels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a great question. The question from Director Showalter made me think. So somebody starts or joins this pilot program in year 3. That means we are still looking at 10 years after that for the person to be paying off. It's a 10-year target per customer, right? So how long is this whole program going to last? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so we're actually going to have basically 1 year. We recruit customers and install the equipment. So the enrollment period will be, we're aiming for 2025. And this is in part because in some ways because of our tech collaborators. I mean, we've been working on this for a while. They have an authorization by the CPUC to be around for a certain amount of time. So we're working with kind of some time constraints to make sure we can do all this evaluation while they're still around. And so the idea is we would do all the customer acquisition and beginning of the loans in 2025. That will give us, and then we'll have a year of kind of the equipment performance and also customer surveys and their response to do the evaluation before the kind of current partnership with tech would end in 2026. And that's just because they are a CPUC authorized program and they have kind of a limited time authorization.
So in a way, there is an end date to the pilot program, and if we don't use all the money, the 7.87 plus or minus the 2 point something, which is down to 5.2 million net for us, whatever is left over will get rolled back into our other funds, right? So do we beyond 2025 is what I'm trying to picture if we haven't used all the money. I'm assuming if we have used all the money, then we don't give it to more customers. But if we haven't used all the money, by the end of that window of time, we stop the program?
So yes, we have a 1 year period where we're going to try to do all the enrollments. You're asking, what if we don't hit our enrollment targets, right? And so we don't end up spending all the money that we budgeted in the program. In that case, yes, we're saying, okay, we have more left over. We would say, all right, we're going to explore a different financing pathway then with that portion of the money, or we could hold it for a bit and see does this seem to be working? Oh, it does. We'd like to expand enrollment, and then we would need to think about, okay, well, the term is actually going to be longer than the 2035 that we initially planned, but maybe that's okay.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Questions online? I don't see any, so let's take public comment on this item. Mr. Carney.
I'm very happy that this item has come before you, and I strongly encourage you to vote yes. I used to work at Solar City, and my job was to do marketing for solar systems that the homeowner had to buy either with cash or with a loan that they would take out privately. This was in the days when a PV system cost $20,000. About 1 year after I began doing that, a colleague invented something called solar lease. And the idea of solar lease was that you would make a very modest down payment, and then you would lease the solar system for less than the electricity savings because the solar energy cost less than what PG&E was selling. This was like rocket fuel for the company I worked for. There is zero chance that if this program is launched that it will not fill the 250 or 200 slots in the year. I mean, I think they could fill it in the first month, frankly, if the marketing materials are correct. There's a lot of upfront money to get the legal contract written in a way that satisfies the board and is also comprehensible and feels safe to the customer. I don't think that the value proposition is really about saving money at all. The value proposition to the target customer you'll find in the first year is about reducing your home's carbon footprint, and that you can guarantee. There are too many issues around forecasting the price of gas versus the price of electricity over a 10-year time span for me to think that you can get really comfortable about promising dollar savings. You can promise dollar savings based on the assumptions that you make coming true, but there's such a wide variety of things that could happen that I think it's best to focus just on the carbon savings, which are absolutely guaranteed. Let's see. The importance of having a profitable private company own assets in this program. So when Solar City was introducing solar lease, all of our solar panels and inverters were owned by a company that could depreciate them using a depreciation technique called MACRS. I don't remember what that stands for, but it allowed them to take a depreciation write-off on their books. And all the tax incentives at the time required that there be a company that owned it, not a government agency. Now, I know some of the things in the IRA and the other recent legislation may have changed that, but Amrit and your lawyers should really be looking at who owns the assets in these homes. Make sure that they're depreciable. That will lower the total cost of the program because some profit-making entity gets to take that depreciation and pay fewer taxes because of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I bring it back to the board. And is there a motion to move forward? Go ahead.
Yeah, first I just want to make a couple brief comments. I really think, I just want to echo a lot of what Mr. Carney was saying. I think this is going to take off. I think this is such a fantastic idea. But yes, I'd be happy to make a motion. I'm going to read
You can say staff recommendation. You move.
Thank God. Okay, can we go? I make a motion to go with staff's recommendations.
For number 3?
Oh, sorry, for number 3.
That's
second.
fine. Okay. Vote, please.
Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Director Showalter?
Yes.
Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Chua?
Aye.
Martinez Patran?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Wonderful. That takes us to item number 4, which is to provide feedback on fiscal year 2024-25 proposed operating budget, staff benefits update, and proposed reserve policy targets. I know we are running a little behind time, but I'm going to request CFO and Director of Administrative Services, Amrit Singh, to take his time. Budget is a very important subject, and so if it takes an extra couple minutes, please. I hope everyone is okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. So I'm going to present the next fiscal year's proposed budget. As you know, per our board policy, 2 months before the end of the fiscal year, we present next year's draft proposed budget so we can incorporate your comments. And then next month, we will bring the final budget for adoption, which hopefully will be a very streamlined presentation. So, as Chair Wallier mentioned, this is a proposed budget. We're seeking your feedback so we can incorporate them and finalize the budget for next month's approval. Along with the proposed budget, we're bringing some minor staff benefits upgrades. And as we do every year, and as is required by policy, we revisit the reserve policy targets to make sure that our reserves are adequate for our business. The main areas I'm going to discuss are going to be key highlights of the budget, go over the numbers in the budget. We'll talk about the forecast uncertainty. What you will find is that this is very much a continuation of the discussion we had in June when we brought the frameworks of the budget, and we talked about the key drivers that are making the budget forecast very uncertain, and now we'll follow it up with actual budget numbers. We'll go through very quickly our power supply expenses, other operating expenses, reserve targets, and we'll give you an update on the status of office space update. If you remember last fiscal budget, you had set aside $20 million towards a building purchase. And then, as I mentioned, we'll talk about the staff benefit upgrades. So very quickly on the timeline, I just want to remind that the Finance and Admin Committee met last week and unanimously recommended that the board approve the budget. As we've done in prior years, given the uncertainty, we will do a budget refresh in December when there's more certainty on PG&E and PCIA rates. And then, as we do every year, we'll do a full mid-year budget adjustment in March. So key highlights of the budget, you may feel deja vu because it's very similar to the mechanics that were at play last year's budget, which is we're projecting a conservative approach to developing the budget, which still shows a positive contribution to reserves of $14 million, but there's a lot of uncertainty in the budget. And the uncertainty, as we discussed in June, is driven by CPUC's adoption of market price benchmark, which will be done in fall, which will then help inform us as to what the PCIA and likely PG&E generation rates will be. And energy prices in general have come down, and as you know from the stress test analysis we've talked about, when energy prices come down, PCIA goes up, and that hurts us. But what's saving us from that scenario is that while energy prices are down, resource adequacy RA and RPS prices have gone through the roof. And we've had this discussion when we're talking about clean energy targets. And so what CPUC adapts for these price benchmarks, which is based on a survey that the CPUC does, looking at what load-serving entities transacted at for these products, then determines what goes into the PCIA calculation. And there's some uncertainty as to what that number will come out. Unlike energy, which is a very traded, transparent commodity, RA and RPS markets are not that liquid. We don't have as much forward market price transparency, and CPUC uses, as I said, what the load-serving entities, almost a 2-year look back as to what they have transacted at. So there's no way that we can forecast what everyone's transacted at, but we took an attempt to estimate what that forecast would be, and we said, well, if our estimates were to prevail and CPUC was to continue with the current methodology of setting PCIA, there's an upswing of $145 million. Last year's budget, we told you there could be an upswing of $100 million, and when we refreshed the budget in December, the upswing was more like $120 million. So I think the budget is conservative, but we don't know until CPUC numbers come out, and there's no harm in waiting to refresh revenue and energy numbers in the December timeframe. Now, one thing, PG&E, knowing that this is the dynamics at play, and I mentioned at the last meeting, they had been advocating at the CPUC and some other places that CPUC, if the market price for RA comes higher than last year's number, just use last year's number, because that will keep PCIA high. We have, along with CalCCA, said that's unfair. You cannot change the games, and that's totally not relevant. And CPUC said that, well, some of PG&E's arguments about the workings of an RA market may have some merit. This is outside of this PCIA proceeding, so the likelihood of them going with PG&E's proposal seems unlikely. But until we see the numbers, we don't know what they will come out with. But nevertheless, this PG&E argument may surface in another proceeding. So we are actively working with CalCCA and preparing for that scenario. So the other thing, the power supply cost, as you know, this is the biggest expense in our budget. There's not much of a change from last year's. It's about 6% higher, and that's primarily because the energy prices have come down, but RA and clean resource prices are higher. But we are obviously always somewhat hedged, so we don't bear the full brunt of the market prices on the margin. So power supply costs are going up about 6%. And for this budget, we're proposing to continue with a 4% discount, general discount we give to all customers, and 1% in dollar amounts converted to dollar bill credits to low-income customers that Dawn mentioned, that bumps up their discount to something like 20%, which in dollar terms is about $4.4 million. And if you remember last year when we set the budget, we had gone through multiple funding scenarios, which we'll do again at the December timeframe when there's more certainty. We had said that for next 2 fiscal years, let's target to keep at a 4%. And I think this budget, even with the conservative assumptions, supports that. The other changes, we are not asking for any additional headcount for this budget. The reason for that is we are still optimizing. Our focus is to fill the remaining 6 vacancies, and we want to basically we're getting to a size where there's some cross-department optimization that needs to take place, and we want to make sure we take the time to do that, and we may make some adjustments during the mid-year budget in March. The other thing regarding compensation is we're adjusting employee compensation as we discussed at the budget framework, 3% for cost of living adjustment and 3% for merit based on number of factors determined by management. And as I said, we will do additional funding analysis based on when we have more certainty on the budget outcome, around the fall time frame, and we'll bring those proposals when we recommend an amended budget in December. And there we will primarily be changing the revenue forecast and energy, because energy prices always change. Even the day after we do the budgets, market prices change. So it's anytime we can update that, we do update.
Thank you, Amrit. I will take just one quick question, Director Lee. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the update. It's funny when they say, million here, million there is real money. Here in this case, 100 million here, 100 million there, because we talk about decreasing of revenues of 111 million, but then it might have a swing based on the RA price going up with improvement, $145 million. Now, you mentioned that there's a possibility, I guess this could be a worst case scenario, that the RA amount will be what PG&E is proposing to be the same as last year. How would that affect the $145 million estimate if the RA rate remains the same?
That will bring us closer to the 14 million outcome. Not quite to the 14 million, because in setting the budget, we also don't know what the RPS benchmark will be. So we also use last year's estimate for this budget to be conservative. PG&E didn't ask that for, but they are asking. But CPUC has already said that this is likely outside of this proceeding. So PG&E could have some other avenues of influencing that decision, but it seems unlikely. But nevertheless, we don't know, and there's no harm for us to wait to make that adjustment. And again, 145 million is a high level assumptions because we don't know what people have transacted at what prices they've transacted at. Some people may have transacted a large volume when prices were lower, right? So we don't know how their survey will come out.
So the worst case scenario, based on what you're saying, very, very conservatively, we should be able to at least put in 14 million to our reserves, basically, right?
That's the indication. Again, budget is always volatile. Energy prices could go up, and that could change the outcome. There's always volatility. We do stress test analysis as we did last year. Last board meeting in June, we talked about that, and based on that, we're going to recommend changes to our reserve policy. So we have means to manage this volatility, and we're aware of that.
Good. And another area that I don't think you mentioned today was regarding the office building purchase. The proposal is to come back to us in about 4 years to look at the market, whether we should buy it or not. Given how fast the market moves around, I guess I was just wondering if it's okay to come back in, say, 2 years, a little bit sooner, so that we could take a look at what's going on with the marketplace, if it's worthwhile to purchase at that time.
Yeah,
So if I may, Director Lee, I think we should let him continue with the slides. There's a lot of
sure.
information
I'm sorry
coming.
about that.
So I thought you needed a clarification
Got it.
there.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Amrit, please carry on. Thanks.
All right, so very quickly, this is how the numbers come up. This is how we come up to the 14 million. And 14 million is really saved by non-operating revenue. And when you see non-operating revenue, that really means earnings from our investments. As you know, the interest rate market is very favorable right now, so our earnings are very good there. And you can see the big red circle there. The story here is the drop in revenues, and that's because of projecting higher PCIA and lower PG&E gen rates for the drivers I mentioned before. So here's how what's driving that $112 million drop as we have modeled the budget. The first two bars here shows basically the 2024 rates. You know, the PG&E rates, if you remember, and it's also in your consent calendar, our rates changed in June corresponding to PG&E rate change. We knew this when we adopted the budget and we accounted for this. So the middle column here says, what's the weighted average using our loads as weights? What's the weighted average rate for the whole calendar year to simplify the comparison? That would be the middle bar there, 16 cents a kilowatt hour for PG&E rate and PCIA of 1.04 cents. So if the budget assumptions as we have modeled here prevails, PG&E rates will drop considerably and PCIA will go up considerably. You can see it will going from 1.4 cents to close to 3 cents. And our rate, which is the blue box, will shrink to remain competitive with PG&E and maintain that 4% discount, and that's the driver of the 112 million down in revenues. And on this slide, we're showing, our high-level estimate, our best attempt to say, well, what it should really be, accounting for what we think the PUC may adopt for RA and RP as benchmarks. Then we are showing that rates would actually increase, and that's contributing to that $145 million upside that we're projecting. But don't count on it. Again, we will revisit this number in December. Power supply cost, again, as I said, not much movements. The cost of clean resources are incredibly high. RA products are incredibly high. Load is slightly going up, and those increases are partly offset by lower forward energy prices. So all in all, compared to last year, it's slightly higher, but not that much higher. Okay, now very quickly on the operating expenses, as I said, personnel, we're keeping the headcount the same. You can see the adjustment for COLA and merit. We're also adjusting for staffing vacancy, and the comparison here is to the mid-year budget for the current fiscal year. And then the other expenses are increasing due to inflation and some key contracts that are up for renewal. On the office, I'll talk more about it in an upcoming slide, but we are budgeting about $1 million for basically renovation and furniture cost of a new office space. And then on the bottom, we show the board-approved, 2% transfer of revenues that we do to programs budget every year. So that's about 8.8 million. Any additional allocations, we will, as I said, we'll bring proposals at the December meeting. Nuclear allocation, those are the savings that we've calculated from taking the allocations. And the customer bill credit that I said we provide to our low-income customer. And then the 1.8 million, which was approved in June, it may have been May, I'm not sure now. The Hanford power plant, is the gas, we had set aside funds to basically mitigate any emissions that may come out of that. Okay, so the reserve targets, if you remember the June presentation, we went through the stress test analysis where we look at extreme but plausible events that some of us who've been in the energy industry for a long time have seen, and not, while extreme, we see some version of that always come out. And for us, the exposure really comes from prices coming down because of the PCIA impact. We updated the stress test analysis. We did not update some of the pricing assumptions around RA and RPS because, again, we don't really have that much market data. And the implied targets, we did update some of the portfolio positions to be consistent with what we're doing with the budget. Those are the implied targets in the middle. What we're recommending is we round that 342 to 350 as a target. And the reason for that is our stress test analysis has always been around 300 or so days cash on hand. It will go up and down depending on volatility and obviously the size of the portfolio. And the reason for recommending 350 is it also aligns with the credit rating agency's guidance, at least one of the rating agencies that gave us, that said, holding 300 days of cash on hand, more than 300 days of cash in hand is credit positive from their point of view. At the last time we met with them, they were telling us airports hold 1,000 days of cash on hand, but anyways, we told them that's not our business model. On the upper target, if I followed the methodology that we had discussed, which the methodology here is if the stress test event were to occur for the next 2 fiscal years, maintaining a 1% discount to PG&E, we don't want to fall below 120 days of cash on hand. And over a 5-year period, the latter 3 years of the 5-year forecast period, we don't want to fall below 90 days of cash on hand. The upper target, actually, when we corrected the stress test analysis, came very high number. And we think this is largely due to the very conservative price assumptions we made on RA and RPS prices coming down. We don't recommend we go to that full extent. We think there should be some higher number than the target. So we're saying around the 490 to 500. We don't want to set it too high that it derails us in carrying out our mission. But we think we had discussed at the executive committee, I think it was last year, whether we should even have the upper target, but the indication was we should have. There should be some gap between the target and upper target so we can manage cash. So 500 is what we're recommending. We always, almost on a weekly basis, we assess the performance of our portfolio, so we're always in the position to advocate changes. If we see some very dramatic shifts in the market. One of the things we talked about at the last meeting is also we are revisiting our hedging strategy. As you know, our hedging strategy right now makes us more vulnerable to market prices coming down. If we were to tighten that, in other words, take into account PCIA, natural hedge impact on our portfolio, we may not hedge as much, which would reduce this volatility and would also tighten some of these reserve targets. So those are some of the considerations to keep in mind. So this is what we're recommending to the board. We have a marked up reserve policy that goes along with this in the staff report. One thing I want to note is, and maybe I'll do that in the next slide. This is showing the reserve projections with the new targets that we're proposing. In the appendix, we also compare it to the old target, existing current targets. We're projecting that we will end the year, fiscal year, if assumptions prevail, with 365 days of cash on hand. Of course, if you get 140 days, it'll be even about 120 days even higher. But this projection takes into account funds that have been allocated but not spent yet, like the building fund and the programs. Programs, it takes time for our customer adoption to pull those dollars that we have been allocated and set aside. So the bottom number there that shows you what if we were to take the earmarked funds out, then we would be ending, our projection is we would be ending the days cash on hand at 285 days, which would be below the target. Again, but we would be over the target if higher budget numbers prevail. So one thing is, in the reserve policy, there is language that if we hit 500 days, or if we project to hit 500 days, the CEO in the next budget cycle has to come up with the recommendation on how to get below that and what to do with that excess fund. But that language isn't very clear whether it takes into account the earmarked funds or not. In the red mark policy, I did not make the change, but I recommend to make the change when I come back in September, is that direction of taking action if we hit 500 days should take into account earmarked funds. The reserve balance should be reduced by earmarked funds. Because any action we will recommend obviously will take time for our customers to use those funds. So those would still be earmarked funds. Okay, so now the office updates. So we did present this to the executive committee, and the executive committee unanimously concurred with the strategy we're proposing here. What we're saying is it takes time to find the right building in the right space, and we want to make sure we do this correctly. To do that, what we're saying is give us the flexibility to enter into a 3 to 5 year lease while we look for a more permanent office space. And what we will want to do is look for an office lease space that gives us we will try to negotiate an option we can end the lease early in case we find a building that's more suitable for us. We're targeting a space to accommodate our larger size. Currently we're around 8,000 square feet or 7,900 square feet. We want to target 11 to 14,000 square feet. We're targeting the new office space to be either in Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Campbell, or Cupertino, which is more centrally located for majority of our staff. As I said, we have set aside some capital expenditure for initial furniture and renovation. In the event we're not able to enter into a new lease, because our current lease expires, I think end of September next year, that the board give us authority to extend the current lease. We will, for budget and reserve projection, we have assumed that we will buy a building in fiscal year 28 and 29. But if we find a building more suitable, we will come before that time to the board. This is what the assumptions we're making in the budget, but the actual lease terms, whatever we negotiate, we will bring back to the board. That will be done in a closed session, so we don't have to reveal confidential prices that we're negotiating. And our plan is to do so before the end of this year. Did that answer your question, or?
I think let's continue.
Okay. Okay, so staffing benefits, this is so our HR director, Gia Lole, and she might be online to answer any detailed questions. Did a lot of benchmarking with other CCAs and also looked at the labor market. So we're continuously looking at our benefits to make sure we stay competitive with our peers and in our labor market. These are some of the changes we're proposing. We want to add, and there's more detailed slides on comparisons to other CCAs and the benefits we're providing, and a more comprehensive list of the benefits in the appendix, as well as in the appendix attachment to the staff report So if you want to have a full look at all our benefits, you have additional information in the appendix. We want to add one more holiday to SVC holiday schedule in line with majority of the CCAs and some of our member agencies, which is to add Chisaves Day as an approved SVCE holiday. We want to increase paid parental leave to 240 hours. Currently, it's 120 hours. We see this in most of the CCAs are providing that, and there were some recommendations from the Finance Committee. We even consider providing more hours, but we think this is a good start and movement in the right direction. To increase the bereavement days to 5 days, currently we provide 3 days. This is in compliance with state requirements. State does not say that you have to pay for 5 days, but we do think it's prudent to pay for 5 days, as we find other companies, mature organizations are doing. And this next benefit is not actually any incremental cost to SVCE, but currently we provide a $600 fitness reimbursement to staff, and staff has to use that within 1 year. And we're always looking for ways to increase retention, and there's movement for employees who want to buy equipment for home fitness. So it's like you can actually accrue it. You don't have to use it all in 1 year. You can accrue it for 5 years, up to $3,000. So if you don't want to spend it this year, you want to buy a treadmill next year, you can accrue for 2 years or up to 5 years. And then the last benefit, this is something we had done during the COVID period where we had provided employees a one-time $500 credit benefit to set up their home office. That had expired. So we're saying that we want it to be an ongoing benefit to support our hybrid work environment, so all new employees coming in to the organization get this. And those employees who did not get it since its expiration and who came after that will also be given the $500 benefit. And that's the summary of that's the highlights of the budget. Again, the risks are the MPV prices, the CPUC will come out. To mitigate against that, we will refresh the budget in December. We can comfortably delay any additional expenditures like we did last year to the December board meeting. And just always a reminder, there are many risks. We model them in stress test. Reserve is a good way. We ensure viability of the organization to carry out its important mission. Once the reserves are gone, we cannot reclaim them, so we do that analysis very carefully. With that, I can take questions, and the ask of the board at this time is actually to provide us feedback so we can come back with the final budget for your approval in September at the next meeting. And as I said, we'll refresh it in December, and we'll do a full adjustment in March, as we do every year.
Yeah. Thank you. It looks good and positive with money coming into reserves, which is wonderful. I like the idea of adding some policies which translate into better staff retention. That was an issue a couple of years ago, so it's good that that has been incorporated. Okay, questions? Anyone? Director Lee, then Vice Chair Tyson.
Thank you. Thanks for addressing the question regarding the lease option. Clearly, this is the time that the tenants is in the driving seat in terms of renewal and rate negotiation. So I expect that you'll be engaging in very aggressive negotiation that we might save some money moving forward next couple of years. On that note, we also talk about the impact of adding more holidays. One is the Cesar Chavez holiday, so there's cost impact to that, of course. But also look into the Lunar New Year as well. The state has adopted it. Our county has also adopted it, the Lunar New Year, as a holiday. I would like to see when the budget comes back to see if we do it as a paid holiday versus a non-paid holiday, how much of a difference would that be if we add that onto our list of a potential holiday in the future. So that's a budget question. But yeah, as said earlier, the fact that the worst case scenario, we still have a surplus, that's always a good thing. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Vice Chair Tyson. Oh, sorry. You have to respond in case, or that was just feedback. You're good.
No, I just want to clarify. The ask was to consider adding the lunar holiday.
Because currently, I don't believe there's a holiday for SVC, correct?
No, it's not.
That's right. Yeah, and so.
And I actually offer a discussion at the board. If the board recommends, we'd be happy to accommodate. Unless Gia, you have any feedback or questions?
Gia, do you want to comment on that or wait to hear from the board first?
I'm happy to look at it for next year. Absolutely. We did look at what, different holidays people were typically taking. We also looked at Indigenous Peoples Day as another one that's being added quite a bit. And we settled on just adding one singular this year, but we certainly can look at it for next year.
Thanks, Gia.
Yeah, can I clarify though? There's no incremental cost to adding a holiday. It's just a reduction in productivity that we see, right? Because it doesn't cost us anything to add a holiday. Staff just doesn't work, theoretically, right? But what we could certainly look at it, as Gia and Amr have alluded to. But we also looked at what we call floating holidays, which is just a holiday that staff can take whenever they want. It's just an extra day off. So that's something else we'd considered.
Yeah, it's funny, but in terms of budgeting, the county, when we add one paid holiday, there's actually a dollar amount on, I don't know, $2.5 million or something like that. That's added to budget. So don't ask me to explain how the county came up with that number. So what we have done, I believe the state of California and also the county has done, is that for Lunar New Year, it's one of those floating holidays. So that is not a paid holiday, but is also entitled staff not having to get special permission to take that day off because it's considered a holiday and it will be used as one of the floating holiday. But up to the staff members. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair Tyson, and then Director Mohan.
Okay. In terms of questions, I just want to make sure I got my head around this properly, because normally you speak about any sort of investment or process and you say, the more I hedge, the more I reduce the volatility. That's why I hedge. And I heard you say, Amrit, that if we reduce our hedging, we reduce the volatility. And I believe that's in the context of our biggest fear, which is a price collapse. If a price collapses, our reserves shrink rapidly. If I think about this, it actually increases the volatility for a price increase if we do less hedging, which is a good thing. So that's the way I understand it. Have I got that right?
Yeah, so the intent of hedging is to basically shrink the size of the distribution.
Yes.
So there's more certainty on the range of outcomes. Right now, we hedge sort of independent of assessing the hedge impact we get from PCIA. So what it makes is our hedge, rather than being at a neutral level, where we're neither long, neither short on an expected basis, on a financial equivalent basis, we're actually long.
Yes.
In other words, have more, in financial terms, more resources than load.
Right.
So that's why when prices go down, we have to sell that excess, in essence, at a lower price, and that's the hit to the reserve. So it's the way the PCIA is set up. And again, we don't have perfect insight into, but we can estimate an impact and reduce. So that would reduce the risk. But yes, then if I were to do a stress test analysis, you will see less sensitivity to a price decrease, but maybe as neutral of an impact to price increase or a decrease. So that's sort of the essence of it.
Okay, and it's how do you hedge a black box, which is the PCIA. So I appreciate that. So let me just say that I'm a big fan of your risk assessment and your sensitivity analysis. Keep doing that. Don't go crazy with the reducing the hedging, though, for fear of perhaps a remote likelihood. So I know you're thinking about it the right way, and keep doing that.
And there are other things where when PG&E is bringing some crazy ideas, we want to we're having a lot of internal discussions as to how we can go to the CPUC and open up discussions about PCIA setup that is more favorable, so we don't have to guess.
Yeah.
So we're having a lot of strategic discussions as to how we can use maybe some of PG&E's arguments to get some of the wrongs that we think have been done corrected. So there are a lot of mechanisms at play here. But yes, how do you hedge a black box? That's a difficulty. That's something that we should not have to be in position to do. So we're looking for regulatory avenues, but in the meantime, we can do some quantitative estimation, and then we'll take small steps. We're not going to go big in one direction.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Mohan.
Just a comment. In our budget gets approved in September, right? So in September, we still have some of the same uncertainties that we do today, because you said CPUC doesn't finalize its rates till December. So we ran into this last year too, I remember. So is this how it's just going to be, this sort of 3-4 months of uncertainty?
This is just our policy. We present a budget in 2 months before the end of the fiscal year, so the board can look at it. So when we go to September, we're ready to approve it, and we hit the start of our fiscal year, October, with an approved budget in place, so we can fund the organization. But as I said, the uncertainty, a lot of the uncertainty around PCIA will go away towards the latter half of the year, namely in October when the CPUC publishes its market price benchmark. Then we will still won't know the final rates that will go into effect in January, but we'll have a good indication of where those rates will come up. And based on those estimates we will convene a meeting with the Finance Committee in November. Based on their recommendations, we will come to the board in December, as we did last year. So that's when the level of uncertainty will go down from the level we're facing right now. So that's when we'll refresh the budget and energy price assumptions.
Okay, since you do it every year, I guess you're used to it.
Yeah, we've done it for the last 2-3 years now.
Okay, my other comment on the report that Amrit presented, for the holidays, you get one, or you're recommending one additional holiday, right? The Cesar Chavez Day. Okay.
Yeah, and based on some feedback, we may come back and ask for a floating day so people can take it for whichever holiday they want to celebrate.
Okay, so I would be okay with one additional day for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Director Showalter.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment again on parental leave. I was really glad to see that was listed here, and I've observed over my career that it's a very, very powerful tool for keeping people in their jobs and having them return to work after they give birth, and having them be happy in their jobs. So I would really urge us to. It seems like we're just starting with this now, to really contemplate, see how it works this year, and contemplate whether it's appropriate to increase it in future years. I don't think we want to be the lowest one of the CCA group. I think we want to be closer to the highest one. So I wanted to mention that. And then the other thing, after my Mountain View colleague Bruce, who always comes to the meetings, always mentions, we're talking about money in this budget, right? That's what we're talking about. But another thing we really budget for is GHG reduction. So I just wanted to ask, I know we get a report of the GHG reduction. When does that come? It's an annual thing that it's prepared for all the cities. When do we expect to see that?
Justin, can you answer that question? Okay, thank you.
Every year it's a little bit different because it depends on when we get the inputs, but I think we should have it for the September meeting. So the next meeting is when our report will be.
Oh, great. Well, I think that's just one of the things that we want to be looking at the money and the GHG reduction kind of together.
Very valid point. I see Director Martinez Beltran online.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Director Showalter, for that too. I really appreciated that point you just made. I really want to commend looking at the retention. I think this is the best way to do it. I think sometimes we want to go to salary first, but with how busy people are and the demands that are put on them, I think it's very smart for us to look at how we can make them more comfortable at work so that they can meet all of their goals and all the things that are important to them. So I think that's a great way for retention. Really, really appreciate that, especially having littles myself and knowing, the peaks and ebbs go up and down depending on school. When you have a new one and you're trying to acclimate to the new schedule, all of that good stuff. So I also wanted to go back to Amrit and really appreciate you going in and driving, always talking to us about the fragility, I guess, of where our reserves are, and that we need to be on top of that and staying on top of that, especially right now. And so I think it's really important that we do look at those targets. We have the upper target, but also I'm perfectly fine rounding up to the 350. I think it's smart. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for always kind of putting that on the front burner, because I think it has to be, as we evolve, looking at our clean energy, looking at how we're making an impact in the community. I think we have to certainly be, we just have to continue to keep our eye on the ball, probably more so than when we first started. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other feedback online?
Oh, I was doing questions, but I hadn't given feedback.
Okay, we'll come back to feedback. Why don't I then take public comment for a moment? Seeing none? Okay, I wanted to make sure I don't forget that. Okay, I'll make a quick comment and then we'll go to Vice Chair Tyson. So, Amrit, I really liked the days cash on hand increase, but specifically calling out, clarifying that the earmarked funds for all the programs would be removed from that. Considering all the volatility in the market with so many complex variables intertwined, the way you're keeping track of everything and making sure that we stay in a strong, stable, robust financial position is critical. So thank you for that. Vice Chair Tyson.
I thought that you presented a very well-reasoned and complete outlook. I liked what you said about the discount, about the reserves, and about the benefits, and about something I can't read. The building.
I think you got feedback from the others earlier. Seems we are in a good place. Is there anything specific besides what we have commented on? Do you need anything else?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
So with that, we come to almost the end of the agenda. Amrit, thank you so very much. It's a lot of constant work, and as I'm sorry, I keep on mixing between one meeting has mayor this and the other one has director this, so sorry. Director Mohan. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Well, I'll say thank you. Yeah. So it's important that you're keeping everything together for us as fiscal year changes. That's what I was trying to recall, as Sheila pointed out, that the fiscal year changes so much, and the impact specifically for SVCE with the PUC and the PG&E, multiple times you have to stay on top of things. This is not the regular mid-year budget adjustments that we in city governments go through. Those are much simpler. For something like this, to constantly stay on top of it is deeply appreciated, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of the board for that. With that, we come to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Any announcement? Director Showalter.
Yes, I would like to thank Bennett Chang and Zoe Elizabeth for helping me. I serve on the National League of Cities Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, and we put together resolutions and policies that NLC and the communities that are members advocate on. And because of this big kerfuffle we're in with our REACH codes, I thought it would be a good idea if we put together a resolution to update the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975 that was cited by the court. So at the last EE&R meeting, we had a presentation by one of the attorneys who had worked on that case before the Supreme Court, and she suggested some things that we could do to amend the legislation. People seem to feel that because we have to get all of our resolutions ready to be okayed at the NLC meeting in November. That means they have to be okayed by the end of September. We didn't really have time this year to do it, but there's a lot of interest in it, and it will be on the docket for next year. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, and particularly thank Benna and Zoe Elizabeth for helping me.
Thank you for that update. That's good to hear. Other director items? Anyone? Online? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned at 9:01 p.m. Thank you so much.